A man named Jim Bishop has dedicated his entire life to building his own castle, a real castle, with spires and a moat and a steel dragon that at one point spewed fire from its mouth. Jim Bishop is the closest thing I have ever seen to a libertarian folk hero. I have become increasingly convinced that if I can figure out how I feel about Jim Bishop, I'll have a clearer grasp of the American character at large, especially in these days of decay and uncertainty. But I cannot figure out how I feel at all. Jim Bishop and his castle are, to me, a Rubik's Cube of American cultural values. I can line up some of them, but then there's always something glaringly off, even if it seems like there ought to be some kind of ultimate way to square everything out. Let's begin at the beginning. Then you can have a crack at it. It's 1966, and Jim Bishop is a 21-year-old bodybuilder asking a girl named Phoebe to marry him after sharing a Coke and a smile just a week previous down in Pueblo. Because this was 1966, she said yes. They began building a home together on this remote bit of mountain road. Because Colorado is a friendly kind of state, passers-by would stop and ask him about the house he was building. Was it a castle? In 1969, he figured the answer must be yes. An in-depth article by the Gazette details it further. Quote, "The people want a castle," he told his wife one night around a campfire at the property, where they had been living in a tin shack while the cottage was under construction. "I think I need to build them a castle." So the cottage would be a castle. The high school dropout would do something amazing, something his alcoholic father never could do. And he would do it for poor families, like the one he grew up in, for those needing something to enjoy for free. He ignored people who told him he could profit off the idea. To this day, the cost of tourist attractions angers Jim. End quote. For the next 40 years, Jim Bishop gathered rock from the public land surrounding his property. He made wrought iron catwalks and window frames of genuinely amazing complexity and creativity. He built what was supposed to be a cottage into a 16-story monument to individual willpower that's more intricately designed than most video game castles. It is, I think, one of the most absolutely incredible structures in North America. Jim Bishop used his hands, his brain, a cable pulley, and a pickup truck to create it. That's it. No formal plans. Jim Bishop is widely quoted to have said, quote, "What's real neat about not having blueprints is that if you make a mistake, you can just call it art." End quote. What he's created here is art. Beyond a shadow of any doubt, it is a monolithic and astounding piece of folk art, especially once you go inside. It's not simply the impressive fact that one man built a castle because he wanted to and was smart and strong enough to. It's the subtle details. Staircases that go up in tandem but access different towers. Gentle, almost 19th century curves in all the wrought iron staircases. A grand banquet hall with stained glass windows. And then a darker and more intimate underhall accessible by stair underneath. A dome that you can go right up into that sways in the wind, sometimes gently, sometimes with a terrifying rattly force. If there is any unused space, it becomes a passageway or a room. The castle interconnects in ways that Mitty said reminded him immediately of the Dark Souls games. I haven't played those myself, but this is certainly the only time I've ever seen such defiantly creative architecture under my feet and in my hands in the real world, not just jutting up from some island in one of the ages of mist. Everyone has the castle-building impulse. Minecraft wouldn't be the most recognizable game of an entire generation of children if that wasn't the case. But the reality of castle building is something else entirely. 99.99% of people give up on that impulse after leaving childhood. That's why European castles are usually products of monarchy. The many labor to prop up the few, and so you get these kinds of structures. In America, our castles are frequently one-man affairs. In the first travelogue I ever tried doing, I talked about Hearst Castle. He may not have built it with his own two hands, but his vision was singular. The place was Hearst. Hearst was his castle. But intricate and grand as Hearst Castle is, the whole thing is just a monument to Hearst's ego, a manifestation of his wealth and self-regard.